In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and if you'd like to engage live in the content, you got to go follow me right here on Instagram Live. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live in the content, but we also simulcast sometimes over here on Facebook Live. So thank you guys for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, it does disappear. Pop on over to YouTube, type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here show is in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants, I found me a doozy of an article, you guys, because as you well know, probably over about the past decade, we have seen several movements in the nutritional health space come and go. And about 10 years ago, we had this book called The Primal Blueprint come out from Mark Sisson. About 9 years ago, we had the Paleo Solution come out, which was a really big book by Rob Wolf about the paleo diet. We've had The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living. We had The New Atkins for a New You. Those books from Volek and Finney and Westman. Then you had my book, Keto Clarity, come in 2014. And lots of books that have been put out there about nutritional health. And there is now a consortium of sorts of various PhDs and other scientists who are attempting to correct the misinformation that is being put out there in the popular diet books. So what I want to talk about here today is this group. They call themselves Red Pen Reviews. And they claim that they're going to correct all the flaws that are in all the popular nutrition books. And what I want to share about this group is they're not unbiased. It's pretty much in this day and age impossible to be an unbiased reviewer of books. And they're pretending like, because they have PhD behind their name, and they're pretending like because they are scientists, that whatever their view is on any given subject in a nutritional health book, that it's the gospel truth, and that, well, it's based on science, so we're the scientists, therefore we are the purveyors of all the information. And when I say one of the names of the people that's involved, this person is the founder of it, you're going to roll your eyes as soon as we get there. All right, so if you're just joining us, there is this new group, Red Pen Reviews, claiming to correct the flaws in all the popular nutrition books. So the headline in this story, this was published in the Seattle Times, by the way. Health claims in nutrition books can be a, quote, volcano of nonsense. A new website is now fighting back. It seems as if every time I turn around, there's a new book promising huge health benefits. Unfortunately, many of these books make health claims and dietary recommendations that aren't backed up by scientific evidence, even when the authors say they're science-based. So let's stop right there. If a book is written and it is sourced with scientific studies in it, would you consider that a scientific book? Of course you would, because scientific studies do point to the science that they're using to make the conclusions that they're making in the book itself. In Keto Clarity, for example, we put 186 references to scientific studies supporting a ketogenic diet. Now, you can use really bad science as your source, which I know the China study is often heralded as the big book for people that eat a vegan diet, and they cite the China study. Well, actually, the China study book isn't the study, the China study. The real China study says nothing of the sort of what the China study book says. But in there, they use a lot of epidemiological research. So you actually have to look up those sources of the scientific information, make sure that it's good quality science. A little bit of epidemiological research cited isn't a big deal, but when it's all you cite, it is a very big deal. And so in Keto Clarity, we put 186 references to various scientific studies. And this new group was created to try to correct that. Now, not everybody does that. Not everybody that writes a nutritional health book puts in there the scientific references that they used to support their claims. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about this brand new group. They're called Red Pen Reviews, and they're attempting to correct the misinformation, what they call a volcano of nonsense in popular nutrition books. And I want you guys to be aware of this group because they're going to probably make some noise in the nutritional health space. They're probably going to get a little bit of publicity in the mainstream of media, especially since they're going to be going after probably a lot of the keto books and such. So far, they've already gone after a few books, which we'll get to here in a minute. But they're making the claim that people writing these books aren't doing it scientifically, even though they claim that the books are science-based. So if you don't have a nutrition science degree, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff? Red Pen Reviews is a good place to start, they say. So who is the founder of Red Pen Reviews? You guys ready for this? Get ready to lose your lunch. The founder of Red Pen Reviews is none other than Stephan Guyenet, PhD. So if you don't know who Stephan Guyenet is, he's been out there for a little while. I remember when I was in the Paleo community, he would attend these conferences. And he had a very famous dust-up with Gary Taubes back in 2011 at the very first Ancestral Health Symposium, where Gary was questioning some of Stephan Guyenet's theories. Stephan Guyenet believes that food reward, that the hyperpalatability of food is what makes people become obese and sick. And Gary, of course, is about the insulin hypothesis. And so those two have butted heads. They recently were on earlier this year on the Joe Rogan show and had this big debate. So Stephan Guyenet is the guy behind this Red Pen Reviews site. Here's what he had to say. Outrageous health claims are a time-honored tradition in this country. I don't know if it's worse today than it used to be, but it's currently an exploding volcano of nonsense. He describes the health and nutrition publishing world as a minefield for readers. Okay, translation, he thinks you're too stupid to be able to think for yourself when you read a book. To me, the purpose of a health book, and I'm the author of a bunch of them, the purpose of a health book is to make you think. The purpose of a health book is not to indoctrinate you. It is not to say, this is the gospel truth. In fact, I encourage anybody that reads any of my books, Keto Clarity, The Keto Cure, Real Food Keto, any of the Cholesterol Clarity, any of these books, please read them and then go research for yourself to prove the veracity of the information that's in there. I want you to do that. I'm encouraging you. Don't trust Jimmy Moore. Go do your own research. And I think any health author wants you to do that. They don't want you to just buy into what you write in the pages. They want you to go check it out. So he says one book says carbs are the devil. The next one says fat is. A recent popular book even says that vegetables are killing us. All of them claim to be supported by scientific evidence, but like many people, I'm frustrated, Stephan Guyenet says, by these competing claims, and I want to know who's right, or at least who is making scientifically persuasive arguments and citing evidence accurately. Let's be truthful, though. Is that the role of a book? Does a book have to be a scientific textbook? Even if it's written from a nutritional health perspective, again, trusting the wisdom of the individual who's buying that book. If there is something in a book that someone finds interesting, what is wrong with exposing someone to an alternative viewpoint that may be outside of the mainstream? And for this Stephan Guyenet guy to create this website, Red Pen Reviews, where they review popular books, oh, here's all the flaws that are in said book. Okay, fine, but who determines what's a flaw? Who determines what's nonsense? If you look at it from the worldview of someone like Stephan Guyenet, who does not believe in the insulin hypothesis, he does believe in his own hypothesis, of course you're going to have a tainted view of many of the popular books that are out there. So this is crazy that we have this kind of a site being put out there. But the reason I'm covering it here today on Jimmy Rants is they're probably going to make some noise in the media, and I'm trying to hedge the bets here so that you know what's about to happen. They're going to make noise, and they're going to be the anti-keto site, and they're going to get a lot of airplay, and they're going to quote from Stephan Guyenet like they did in the Seattle Times story. And again, if you're just joining us, there is a brand new website that has been created, this group, Red Pen Reviews, and they're looking at all the dietary, nutritional health books that are out there. And their aim is, they're a group of scientists, their aim is to correct all the misinformation of these non-scientists that are writing books. And I'm making the case here that you're not stupid. You're not. I don't think you're stupid. I think you could read a book like Keto Clarity and go, okay, here's usable information for me. Here's information that's probably not very usable for me. And then you apply it to your life. There's no harm in doing any of that. And yet they're trying to make it out to be something bigger than it's not. All right, let's go back to the article. I'm frustrated by these competing claims, and I want to know who's right, at least who is making scientifically persuasive arguments and citing evidence accurately. That's Stephan Guyenet. So he said most book reviews don't provide helpful guidance for a few reasons. The reviewers usually aren't nutrition science experts. Look, people buying books don't need to be a nutrition science expert. If they were a nutrition science expert, they would be the ones writing books, right? It's silly to me that there's this high expectation level that someone reading a nutritional science book needs to have it be 100% on point with whoever is reviewing on this Red Pen Reviews, on point with what they believe. And they're pretending like they're unbiased. They're incredibly biased. It's crazy. And then write about whatever aspect of the book catches their interest. Well, he's talking about like Amazon reviews. So when you go on Amazon, people talk, oh, I read Keto Clarity and it really helped me understand the role that carbohydrates play in the body, and I didn't understand it before. I implemented it. I've lost 50 pounds, blah, blah, blah. And so he thinks that is not a relevant perspective. And I think that's so short-sighted. I don't think everything has to come down to a scientific evidence. Is scientific evidence important? You bet it is. But is it everything? No. And as an author in this space, as someone who writes a whole lot of books on this subject, people wouldn't buy the books if there was not veracity in there. What is it? This is the better question for Stephan Guyenet and the others that are a part of this Red Pen Reviews site. Why are people attracted to a book like Keto Clarity? Why are people attracted to The Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson? Why are people attracted to The Paleo Solution by Rob Wolf? Why do they buy the books that they buy? Could it be that they have a connection with that author? Could it be that the author finally translates said science into usable language that people can understand and then apply into their own lives? You're not stupid. As an author, I never pretend like you, the reader, is stupid. I pretend like you're incredibly intelligent because I don't have to pretend. You are. And so if you're reading a book and something doesn't make sense, I hope you go research it. I hope you go look it up. And I hope you do your own homework after you read the book. And maybe the book kind of gets you to start thinking about things in another way that you'd never thought about before. That's the purpose of a book, not to be this grand purveyor of all scientific evidence and it has to, every single word on the page. It's very arrogant for someone like Stephan Guyenet and the group, the Red Pen Reviews group, to just think that that's the way everybody thinks. The public needs a resource to help evaluate the information quality of health and nutrition books, says Guyenet, adding that the publishing industry needs better incentive to publish factually accurate books. Translation, if it ain't boring and putting you to sleep with million-dollar words that you don't understand, it ain't scientifically accurate. And to me, those books are the ones that have been out there for years that nobody understood. When I wrote Keto Clarity, keto as a concept, ketosis, nutritional ketosis, all that, had been written in other books. The reason why Keto Clarity clicked was for the first time you had a layperson translate that science into everyday language so that then it could be understood. And then that understanding then got them to go back and read Volek and Finney and some of the other books, Dr. Atkins' books, some of the older books that talked about ketosis. Then they understood it. You don't put a kindergartner in a 11th grade math class. You don't. They got to learn the 1, 2, 3s and 1 + 1 = 2 first. So I think Stephan Guyenet and this group here, I think they're missing the point. The point is you got to get people to understand first and encourage them to learn. And you guys that follow me here on Jimmy Rants, you know one of the basic tenets that I repeat often, early and often, is don't trust anything I have to say without checking it out for yourself. And I still believe that. Anything I share here, anything in any of my books, I hope you go behind me and you try to learn for yourself. I'm not pretending like I'm indoctrinating you with what I say. I'm giving you information, and then you take that information and you add to it with your own research. That's how the world works. Ultimately, better information means better health for us all. I think the more information you have and that you're able to take in, the more educated you are, the more aware you are of what's out there, then you can make better choices. That's what makes better choices, not necessarily, quote, better information. Better is subjective. Who's better? If you ask Stephan Guyenet if it's about the insulin hypothesis, he doesn't think that's better information. You ask Gary Taubes about the insulin hypothesis, he does think it's better information. I think that's the thing that got me about this story the most, is this Red Pen Reviews pretends to be this scientific, unbiased. We're not biased. We're all scientists. And they have incredible bias. Newsflash, even scientists who do studies are incredibly biased. Let's not pretend like they don't have their preconceived notions. Those days where we have people in the scientific world that are totally objective are pretty much long gone. I don't know many totally objective researchers these days. And that's a sad commentary on where we are. But it's one reason why we don't ever get the research that we need, because you have people that are coming to conclusions long before they actually do the study. And then they fit the study to fit their conclusion, and so they can make a big splash in the nutritional health world when it doesn't really mean anything. That's the sad part. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about this new group called Red Pen Reviews, and they're claiming to correct the flaws that are in popular nutrition books. And the guy that founded this is a guy named Stephan Guyenet, and you might know him. He recently did a big debate of Gary Taubes on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he's a dyed-in-the-wool, anti-keto, anti-insulin hypothesis guy. He thinks it's about calories, it's about hyperpalatability of foods, and that if we take away the hyperpalatable foods and only eat real food, I mean, I get where he's going with it. I think there is a mix between the two, but for him to pretend like that he's not biased is pretty laughable. Guyenet and his team of reviewers all have advanced degrees in nutritional science or a closely related field. Guyenet earned his doctorate in neuroscience from the University of Washington. They score each of the books that they review on scientific accuracy of the references. A book may cite research studies that don't actually support the claims, and then the healthfulness of what the book is promoting. Again, who determines scientific accuracy? Who determines accuracy of the references? Who determines what healthfulness of what the book is promoting is? Who gets to determine that? Who died and made these people God? The last time I checked, most of these things are pretty subjective. And they're through the eyes of the person with their own personal bias. Sorry, I don't buy this. I don't buy that they're going to be completely objective about this. Another one of the reviewers is named Mario Kratz, a PhD faculty member and researcher at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, as well as the University of Washington. So he's a buddy with Stephan Guyenet. He said, what we have in common is that we're all consumers of these types of books. I read them in my free time, in part because I'm hoping to learn something new. And so one of the books that they decided to research and review was Dr. Stephan Gundry's book called The Plant Paradox. So you guys may know about Dr. Gundry's work. I've had him on the Living La Vida Low Carb show recently talking about his book. And he talks a lot about the lectins that are in plant-based foods. And so in here, they claim that lectins, a type of molecule found in certain plant foods, which include grains, legumes, fruit, nightshades, and cucumber vegetables, and some types of dairy will cause obesity and numerous chronic diseases. That's what Dr. Gundry claims in The Plant Paradox. So then Kratz says in his review of The Plant Paradox, the author claims repeatedly that it's based on scientific evidence, but it's clearly not. The degree to which people think they can fool everyone is apparently without limits. So here's the thing for this Kratz guy. Is there no veracity in what Dr. Gundry has to share? And just because he shares a viewpoint that might run counter to what you know, does it not push the boundaries of what your thinking might be in this area? And if you're a researcher, your scientific curiosity should kick in really, really hard at some point. Okay, why is this author making these claims? And do we automatically dismiss the entire book simply because there's something in a book that you don't agree with? Okay, so this is my concern about this Red Pen Reviews site, is that they're making judgments based on their own bias and based on their own experience. Oh, well, we didn't learn about this in my PhD program, so therefore there's no veracity there. No, science always is progressed when people push the envelope of what we believe and what we think. And the moment we stop taking a look at things that are outside the box and at least giving them some credence to take under consideration, the moment we do that is the moment we stop progressing in the science. Science is pushed along because people are willing to speak things that are outside the norm. Okay? So that's what Dr. Gundry has done with his book, The Plant Paradox. And yet they are making the claim here, it's not based on any scientific evidence, and we need to stop trying to fool people. And again, you're not stupid. You are a very highly intelligent person, and I trust you. I trust you read something and you go, that's kind of outside what I believed, and I want you to go dig deeper. That's what nutritional health books do. They're not supposed to be an Encyclopedia Britannica of all things knowledge on that particular subject. Maybe they don't address things that needed to be addressed. Maybe they do address things that you didn't think about. All of that is a part of being an author of a book about nutritional health, or really a book about anything. But since we're talking about nutritional health books, I want you to read Keto Clarity, and then I want you to take a microscope and look up everything that we shared in there. Any author wants that. I guarantee you Dr. Gundry is not upset that they think his book is unscientific, but he will challenge this group. Tell me where I got it wrong. Don't just say that I have no scientific evidence. Don't just say that I'm fooling people. Tell me where I got it wrong. And then you have that discussion. And it's in that discussion where you learn truth. Misinformation aside, Kratz said that books like The Plant Paradox can get in the way of the actual research. For example, he said if he applied for a grant to study lectins and investigate whether they have an effect on health, the application would likely be rejected because lectins are now viewed as a fad. Who says it's a fad? And isn't the purpose of science to vet these things out? Again, preconceived notion that lectins aren't an issue. But what if they are? Don't we want to see that in the scientific research? Don't we want to look up and test these claims that are putting in a popular diet book? I think so. Same with keto. Don't we want keto to be examined? Don't we want this to be researched? Oh, well, there's no science behind it, so we're not going to research it. That's silly. That's unscientific at its very worst. There's no accountability whatsoever. People can write whatever they want, and apparently publishers will publish it, he said. We have a responsibility to help consumers differentiate between what is and isn't based on science, and ultimately help them make sense of these books if they choose to read them. Okay. Again, I think they assume you, as the consumer, are too stupid when you read something that runs counter to what they believe is true. They don't believe you can think for yourself. And to me, that's highly insulting. If I was you, as someone who is their target audience, oh, well, we're going to have to be your nanny at this red pen reviews because you're too stupid to figure out when you read a book, it's not based on science, blah, 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 blah. To me, that's highly, highly arrogant. How dare you, Stephan Guyenet? How dare you? And how dare you, Mario Kratz? I don't care if you got a PhD, RD, MD, whatever you got after your name. You look pretty silly. You look pretty stupid. And yes, I'm fired up here today on Jimmy Rants. Guyenet said when he wrote his book in 2017 called The Hungry Brain, he realized that no one fact-checks health and nutrition books. I chose to have my book reviewed by experts, but that was completely voluntary, he said. There's no filter in place to protect consumers from inaccurate and potentially harmful health information. There is no incentive to be accurate, and in fact, there is an incentive to be inaccurate because unusual or exaggerated claims get more attention. Okay, whoa. I have written 8 total books, about to come out with my 9th one in 3 weeks from tomorrow. As someone who has written for a major publisher since 2012 was when I got signed. My first book was Cholesterol Clarity in 2013 with them, Victory Belt Publishing. Guys, they have told me some things had to be, at least I needed to give them a reference. They have told me you need to provide evidence for this claim you're making. Stephan Guyenet is pretending like it's the wild, wild west in the publishing world, and maybe with other publishers that's true, but if it's a Victory Belt Publishing imprint, I guarantee you they are checking the veracity, because here's the thing. If there's misinformation in one of these books, they can not only go after the author of said book, but they could also go after the publisher. So let's not pretend like that these publishers just publish willy-nilly anything. And when I was writing my book, my second self-published book in 2009, I was going with a print-on-demand company. And even that print-on-demand publisher said, oh, you can't say whatever it was I was saying, I forget what it was at this point, without showing evidence. So let's not pretend like publishers aren't doing their due diligence with some of this information. They are double checking and making sure that if you make a claim in a book, that they won't get sued. They make me remove a lot of the kind of rant stuff that I do about big food, big pharma. They kind of make me soften it a little bit because they need to make sure that it's on the up and up so they don't get sued. So this claim by Stephan Guyenet is silly. And he's pretending to take the high ground. Oh, with my book, I sent it through a group of highly respected peers, and they said The Hungry Brain was fine. I wish other books would do that. The arrogance, the smugness drips off the page. Although many nutrition and health professionals read Red Pen's reviews, these reviews are designed to be useful to anyone interested in health and nutrition books. Yes, if you want the bias of the authors of these reviews. Absolutely. Very helpful. At the top of each review page are at a glance color-coded percentage bars rating the book in each of the 3 categories that they surveyed. And if you want more information, you can scroll down to the review summary. And if you want even more detail, you keep scrolling and you can read the full review. Because each book is scored using the same scale, as the number of reviews grows, readers will be able to compare scores between books to find the best book on any given topic. Again, best according to who? That's right, best according to these biased researchers that created this. They have a bias. And I bet Stephan Guyenet's book, The Hungry Brain, will be one of the highest rated nutritional health books on the list. No question in my mind. Oh, I'm not biased. Oh, I'll have one of my peers review it. And yet you founded the company that's reviewing and... Crazy. Books reviewed so far include Grain Brain, which is by Dr. David Perlmutter, The Bulletproof Diet by Dave Asprey, and The Longevity Diet. I think that's the one that Dr. Jason Fung and Dr. James D. Nicolantonio wrote together. Guyenet said he anticipates publishing about 1 review a month, focusing on the most popular newly published health and nutrition books, as well as some influential classics. Bring it! Please review Keto Clarity. I double dog dare you to claim it was not based on science. I double dog dare you to question the veracity of a highly respected fellow researcher in Dr. Eric Westman, who was my co-author on Keto Clarity. Go ahead, Stephan Guyenet. I double dog dare you, because you ain't gonna find it. Now, it runs counter to what you believe, but don't pretend like it's not based on science. Future plans include expanding the reviews to cover topics such as medicine and exercise science, which will require recruiting expert reviewers in those areas and possibly offering reviews in different languages. We want to become the default resource for people looking to evaluate the books they read or they're thinking about buying, said Guyenet, and we want authors and publishers to understand that the success of their books will now depend on how factually accurate they are. You want to bet? I don't think this website is going to have much of an impact at all, other than it will be trumpeted in the mainstream media. That's the biggest kind of thing. That's the reason why we're talking about this here today, is I think they will make some noise in the media. But I think most people are over all of this kind of nonsense that's put out there. If people want to read a book called Grain Brain, why are you discouraging them away from it? If people want to read a book called The Plant Paradox, what is the reason why you would be against that? If they want to look up the concepts Dave Asprey wrote about in The Bulletproof Diet, I think the more information they have in their cranium, the better. Why are we discouraging people to learn more? Because that is their intended effect. They want you to stop buying books like Keto Clarity. They don't want you to expand your knowledge that may run counter to what is in the conventional wisdom. And to me, that's the big debate in this space. Well, if you run counter to conventional wisdom, you're unscientific. And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe you can just automatically assume that just because it runs counter to what is considered mainstream normal thinking when it comes to nutrition, that it's just automatically, without question, unscientific. It's simply not. Along those lines, Guyenet points out that the aim isn't simply to critique, but it's also to support authors. Oh yeah, you're going to support the authors that believe what you believe. So if you think calories in, calories out is the be all end all, if you think cut your fat, cut your calories is going to be the best way to get healthy, if you believe go exercise in the gym till you knock yourself out, that's all conventional wisdom. And they're going to support those authors, and then the rest of us, not so much. It reminds me of the annual U.S. News and World Report Best Diets survey. And inevitably, over the past 5-10 years that they've come out with these, the Atkins diet, keto, paleo, Whole30, all of these are on the bottom of the list because they run counter to the conventional wisdom when it comes to diet. And this is why they're lowly rated. I see this website, this Red Pen Reviews website, in much the same way. They are trying to conserve conventional wisdom. And in that conservation of conventional wisdom, you know what the unintended consequence for them, that they don't even know it yet? They're going to drive people to go buy these books that they're reviewing and they're saying are bad and unscientific. People will be like, oh, well, what's wrong? Oh, well, we need to look further into this. I want to learn more. So bring it on. Bring it on. We've published our full review method on our website so authors can guide their writing in a more evidence-based direction before we even see their book. So they're trying to play nanny. They're trying to say, look, authors, we see you out there. You're not allowed to just write willy-nilly whatever you want, as if authors of nutritional health books do that. We don't. At least Jimmy Moore doesn't. When I share information in a book, we have vetted it out. We have shared the scientific backing, and we provide information that encourages you and educates you at the same time. And this is something Stephan Guyenet and his group are totally neglecting. All right, I want to see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. We're going to start over here on Facebook Live, and we'll come to Instagram here in a second. Thanks for being here, you guys, today on Jimmy Rants. All right. Your book's opened my eyes to so many people. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mark. Berkeley says, or trust your results, talking about the research. Absolutely. Self-made authority, how convenient. Exactly, Dan. That's my problem, Dan, is people like Guyenet pretend like they are the purveyors of all the information that's right. Who died and made them God? I vehemently disagree that it's only about food reward, which is what Stephan Guyenet believes, and he says insulin isn't even in the picture. I think it's both, but his narrow-mindedness makes this new website pretty biased from the beginning. Wendy says, yes, we're attracted because it works. It makes sense instead of the traditional nutritional recommendations. Exactly. I tried for a year to teach the science only. It was so boring. Most were just not interested. Dan, that's the reason I wrote Keto Clarity and all my books. If you've read any Jimmy Moore book, hopefully you were educated in lay people language so that anybody could understand. Hopefully you were a little bit entertained in the process as well. And in that presentation, you learned. Whereas if you read it, beta-hydroxybutyrate, gluconeogenesis, you wouldn't have learned anything, right? So we got to meet people where they are. And where they are is you got to assume they know nothing. I remember when we used to do the early on, when we used to do low-carb cruise, which we're leaving on this weekend, early on, people would come out into the hallway while people were talking, and they go, what's a keto? They didn't even know even like the basic. So we always have to remember that group of people. Make it simple and interesting, and people are more open. Absolutely. Who is paying them to do this? So Karma, I don't think they're necessarily being paid. Maybe they are, but there was nothing in the story about them being paid. But I think it's more they're just tired of not being listened to. Let's be honest. Stephan Guyenet's book, The Hungry Brain, did not sell very well. It bombed in the publishing realm. And I would hope that someone like him would say, okay, why didn't my book make a bigger splash? Why does a book like The Bulletproof Diet get a bigger audience? Why does Stephen Gundry's book, The Plant Paradox, sell more copies than The Hungry Brain? That's what I would ask if I was him. I will be calling this every time I can. Medicine is not a real science. Medicine is guessing and then trying to explain what is found using science. Almost nothing can be accomplished in real life using this type of approach. Good point. I love when you mock the arrogance. You do it well, says Jessica. I'd love it if he'd review my doctor's recommendations for accuracy and scientific proof. Oh, Crystal, you are preaching, girl. That's right. All of these popular science, nutritional health books, their purpose is to correct all of the misinformation that you've been given from your mainstream medical doctor. And medical doctors have been extraordinarily unscientific in what they're teaching people about nutrition for a very long time. So let's not pretend like what they're sharing is based on any true scientific evidence. It's not. Stay with your experiences, learn from others. Yep. Thank you, Alberto. Julie says, I'm only 2 months in and am unfamiliar with your background and story. Did you start keto for weight loss or other health reasons? So that's a general question, Julie, but I'll answer real quick. I started as a weight loss. I was 410 pounds and I went on the Atkins diet and I started learning and educating myself. Go look up my work. Read my book, Keto Clarity. We share a lot of my personal story in there. All right, let's come over to Instagram Live. Welcome in, you guys. Talking about this Red Pen Reviews site. So good to see you, says Candy. Thank you for being here. Interesting topic. I had no idea. Yeah, these kind of things, they're popping up. And I see it more and more and more where these groups are trying to correct the misinformation they see. They're running scared because people are embracing keto and other real food type of diets, and they can't have any of that. How does this happen? Do they get the publisher to reprint with their corrections? Are there copyright laws? I'm trying to understand the process. So CKS, no, they can't really do anything other than just pressure the publishers to be more scientifically accurate. But again, they pretend like publishers don't do any scientific background veracity on these books. My publisher does. My publisher has long said, you got to show us the evidence if you make a claim. When I'm in the editing process of a book, they'll put a big mark highlighter on some statement that I made, and they're like, cite your source for this. Cite your resource. What is the evidence that supports this claim? And if I can't come up with that evidence, then they delete that from the book. So they pretend like publishers aren't doing anything and it's just the Wild Wild West, and that's simply not true. Blatant censorship by a BS artist who funds him. Yeah, Keto Doc, somebody over on Facebook asked that same question about who is funding this. We don't want to know why everything we are told is not working. Exactly, Deanna. Red Pen Reviews uses a structured expert review method. His research was funded by the U.S. National Institutes of Health. Okay, so Keto Doc, thank you for that. The NIH, it looks like, is the one behind this Red Pen Reviews and funding it. And Keto Doc calls it governmental censorship. It is fascinating. Why would the government health organization be involved in this? What would be their motive? Controlling the status quo? Giving some shade maybe to the U.S. dietary guidelines, which are conveniently coming out in 2020 in the midst of the keto popularity. They got to deal with this. And if they get a whole bunch of reviews up from scientists that say, oh, all these keto books are unscientific, that throws some shade maybe. I'm just thinking out loud. So thank you for doing that footwork for me, Keto Doc. George says it's about who controls the information to the masses. Look at the backlash to the people who want to print the Bible for the masses to read. Exactly, George. That's exactly right. Candy says, what are the best sites to fact check? So PubMed is a great resource for lay people that want to go to the actual studies. If there's a study out there, PubMed has it listed, and you could type in some keyword on PubMed and it'll find pretty much any study on that keyword. That's a big one. I know there are other websites out there, but that's the one. If you're looking for scientific studies to support any claim, that is the one. Can you imagine what would happen if we build an airplane using the same approach? So guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants is you're going to hear about this group led by Stephan Guyenet, a very biased, anti-keto guy. He has no respect for anybody that believes in the insulin hypothesis. And he's created this site called Red Pen Reviews. You're going to see them quoted, you guys, in the popular media. Get ready. It's coming. And these reviews claim to correct all the flaws in popular nutrition books. And I'm here to tell you, they're not unbiased. And I hope they do get a hold of keto clarity, and I hope they try to taint it in some way. Because what's going to happen is they're going to end up driving people towards the very books that they're trying to make people stop buying. Bring it. What's your book called? Tyler says. So my most popular book is Keto Clarity, but I've written 8 total books. Just go do a search on Amazon and type in Jimmy Moore. You'll find all my books. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you can engage live in the content right here on Instagram Live. Go follow me there at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. And once you're there, you can engage live. We also go simulcast here on Facebook. If you miss the live here on Instagram, you can watch it for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, it does disappear. Be sure to go check out all the past episodes up on YouTube. Type in a keyword search Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Finally, the best of the best moments of this here show are in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcast as well as Twitter or Stitcher. Not Twitter. I'm brain dead from all this traveling. Stitcher. JimmyRants.com is the website. And no, don't look up Jimmy Fung, says Alberto. There are books out there that do an amalgam of my name and Jason Fung's name and Leanne Vogel's name and all the different people. So JimmyRants.com. So until next time, Instagram, we'll see you then.